it.
Now, from a New Year's Day walk in the woods to slaying immortal beings, this week's review covers a diverse range of games and platforms. GameSpot's Guy Cocker casts a critical eye over the latest releases.
I pledged an oath in blood. And now my home. All that I loved is gone.
God of War Ascension is the big release for this week. It's on PlayStation 3 and it's the 6th or 7th release in this particular franchise. There's a little bit of them running out of ideas at this stage. I'm a huge God of War fan, and even I was getting a feeling of deja vu playing through this title. That said, you know, if you are a fan of this particular blend of action gaming, it's incredibly violent, it's got lots of boss fights, it also looks incredibly beautiful. It will satisfy you. It's based on sort of old Greek mythology, so it follows the character of Kratos, who's pretty well established at this point as a very angry man. It kind of goes into his origin story, so it's 15 years before the original God of War, and it follows his sort of descent into madness, and along the way he will sort of pull a lot of heads off beasts and cut them up in very violent ways. It's one of those games that it's relentlessly, I mean, it's incredibly graphic and violent, but there's also a sort of therapeutic element to that. What's new in this version is multiplayer, which is it's successful within the confines of what it is. It's an action game, so the multiplayer game is quite chaotic, but it's one of those titles where the multiplayer feels a little bit tacked on, and I doubt anyone will be playing it in a couple of months' time. There is a multiplayer mode that's what's described as a horde mode. Lots of games have it these days, where you take on waves after wave of enemies with your friends. That works better. All in all, it's a good game, not a great game. Trials Evolution, for anyone that hasn't heard of it before, is one of the best games ever released on Xbox Live Arcade, and is actually one of the most popular games ever released on Xbox Live Arcade. And Xbox Live has been incredibly successful. It was something that I've never heard of before, really, in consoles, where people download games. And it's a very simple game. You're essentially a side-on motorbike racing games where you perform lots of stunts. But what makes it great is the realistic physics. I mean, it's just so addictive trying to nail that perfect run, and you can upload your times and play against your friends. A great competitive element to it. Now the series actually started on PC, and it's had great success on Xbox Live, and now they've brought those games that have been on Xbox Live, so it's Trials Evolution and Trials HD, which was the original, and they've packaged it up for the PC at a budget price, which is good, and there's some extras in there like the soundtrack, so it's a good value release. Now what makes the PC version, I think, probably the definitive version, is that there's a track creation mode where you can create your own tracks, share them with friends, and it's a very powerful editor, and it's what the makers of the game actually use to make the game as well. It's much easier on the PC to design these tracks. On the console with the Xbox controller, it was always a little bit fiddly. It's much easier with the keyboard and mouse. And there's some other nice features as well, including the ability to upload your perfect runs to YouTube, direct from in the game, which is quite nice. But all in all, it's a great package, like 129 tracks, plus all the ones you can download from people that are creating online. And it's just a great game, and it's been released at a budget price, so if you haven't checked it out, now is the time. The iOS and mobile game market in general is full of games that have simple gameplay or kind of quick fix elements. So things like Angry Birds, you can just open up and play, and you get your minute's worth of enjoyment and you put it away. Year Walk is the complete antithesis to that. It's a game that is, I mean, it's very beautiful, but it's one that it requires an investment of time. You can finish it in probably about 3 hours, but it requires you to almost sit down, probably in bed or on your sofa, and really invest some time into it. And it's the sort of game, I will admit, that game reviewers like me love, because it's very different to what's out there. It's beautifully presented. It's the kind of backstory to it. It's a Swedish game, and in Sweden there's this tradition, or an old tradition, where on New Year's Day, men in Sweden go on long walks in the forest, and this is the idea behind it. You kind of meet characters and you solve puzzles, and you generally just wander around and try to sort of get sucked into this beautifully presented world. And the art style on it is absolutely phenomenal. It's like I've said, beautifully presented like 3 times now, but it's difficult to describe how beautiful this game looks. And it's really well done in general. There's a free companion app that's kind of an encyclopedia as well. So if you imagine you're playing the game on your iPad and you've got the encyclopedia on your iPhone, obviously you're a very rich family if you've got all these devices going on. But it's an interesting idea, and I think it's it's only like, I think it's £1.50, and it's just, I was blown away by it. I think if you're looking for something fresh and interesting on the iPhone or iPad, it's definitely worth a purchase.
He came to destroy the evil that lives here.
Castlevania is a game that used to be huge in the 80s or 90s, and it's coming back on the 3DS in Castlevania Lords of Shadow Mirror of Fate, which is a stupidly long title and it doesn't really make sense. But it's a game for the 3DS. The 3DS had a sales spike last year, but it seems to have it's missing a certain genre of action games which Castlevania fills the void for. It's got some interesting elements. You play as multiple characters. If you're a fan of the series, it fills in some. It takes the series story-wise in an interesting new direction. The action is good. It's just probably not up to the standard of previous Castlevania games, and it's a shame really, because the 3DS does need action games. I just wasn't really that impressed with it. It's good for what it is, but I don't think it's going to be a classic by any means. But if you do have a 3DS and you're looking for a solid action game, then it's worth picking up.